Pleased to be joined by Brad Edwards, who has been the BCS guru for a number of years, very familiar with the Southeastern Conference, and is a college football analyst for ESPN and ESPN.com. Brad Edwards joins us here on the new Sentinel Sports Page. Hey, Brad, Vince, and Brendan Quinn. Good morning, Brad. How are you?
Good morning. I'm doing well.
Hey, Brad.
Survived the week of playoff drama, and turns out there wasn't any drama really, which is good. Got what we expected.
All right, let's start with this big picture question, Brad. Why now? Why did the presidents and why did they all come to the decision that now was the time to give what many of us have wanted for a long time, and that's college football playoff?
Yeah, I think there are two parts of it. One is that the conference commissioners were really reacting to their customers. You know, that we've all heard that phrase, the customer is always right, and the college football fans are the customers of this business, and there's a lot of money being made off this business, and I think the commissioners finally reached the point where they realized that the customers were right in that a change needed to be made, and the fact that you had a lot of coaches and athletic directors starting to complain about it too, I think is really what put it over the top, and so I think that had a lot to do with the commissioners getting together, and let me point out also. The customers speak in ways that affects the business, and you look at the BCS itself, and several of the games when they were not hosting the national championship were starting to slide. I mean, attendance was dropping at some of these midweek games. The ratings were dropping, and they knew that something had to be done, and I think that's what caused the commissioners to really be unified in this proposal they made to the presidents. Now, in the past, the presidents never would have considered it, but I think that in some ways, perhaps the economic troubles we're having, not only in the country but around the world right now, contribute to this. In that universities are needing more money, just like everybody else is, and I think they all recognize that a college football playoff was the last major untapped source of revenue out there. And as much as they might have been philosophically opposed to it, I think they recognized that this was something that they really couldn't let get away. And I think money had a lot to do with the presidents approving it. And so that's what got us where we are.
Brad, it's Brendan Quinn here. You brought up money right there. So the current BCS and Rose Bowl contracts pay out like about $150 million annually, and that deal is going to run out after 2013, I believe. So I guess a new deal coinciding with the new 12-year setup will be put out to bid. And what kind of figures are kind of being thrown out there in terms of what that might bring in?
It's hard to say for sure because the TV negotiations haven't even begun. But the estimates that I've seen are basically that this 4-team playoff would bring in about 3 times what the BCS was bringing in. Now, you had the BCS was a 5-game package, and of course only one of them truly meant something. I know a lot of people love to watch the Rose Bowl regardless, but now you're looking at a 6-game package where 3 of the games are going to have a very, very high level of significance, and I think that's the reason that they're anticipating that the value is going to triple, and you look around, and there are a lot of football programs that are doing well right now, bringing in a lot of money. And people would ask the question, well, why do you need to be greedy and want more? But it's not all about football. I mean, we know that at most schools, football is what funds most of the other sports on campus. And then the programs that are really good in football, or the universities, I should say, that are really good in football, have seen how the success of football has led to increase in enrollment and donations and all sorts of other sources of revenue just for the university as a whole. And there are just so many ways that that the money-making potential of football affects the entire university, that it's a much bigger deal than it really seems on the surface.
We're visiting with Brad Edwards from ESPN, ESPN.com, college football analyst, here talking about a college football playoff. So to piggyback what you were just talking about, in making decisions, we heard Larry Scott talk about how important the academic calendar was. some of us scoff at the notion that an academic calendar was a big factor. Where is academics, I guess, in this, or the academic calendar in the whole list of priorities for them?
Well, to me, the biggest thing with the academic calendar is not wanting to put games right up against exams. That most schools are taking exams in December. And I think the reason that bowl games have typically started somewhere around December 20th is because they're trying to get clear of the exam schedule and get a few days removed from that, so they're not asking teams to either play during exams or even to come right out of exams and have to play a game. So I think if this thing were ever to expand to 8 teams and you're looking for, okay, when would they play quarterfinals? I think that's when they would have to be played. Now, it would be somewhere around December 20th, just a little bit before Christmas. Now, up until recently, the presidents had always been opposed to, playing any later than, January 2nd or so. But then we've seen the last few years they've played that national championship game somewhere around the 8th or 9th. And what I've been hearing for the last several months is that the presidents all of a sudden had decided that's too late. We want to reel that back in, get that back to to being no more than a week into January. And then we see the news yesterday that the first championship game under this new 14 playoff is scheduled for January 12th. So, I guess going into January is not as big of a deal because it's the start of a new semester, and hey, those of us who went to schools where academics wasn't the most important thing, half the kids on campus aren't going to class that first week anyway. They just stop by and get the syllabus. So I don't think January is as big of a deal. I think it's really just the exam schedule in December is what they're talking about when they reference the academic calendar and being concerned about that.
Yeah, you got to at least show your face so you don't get bounced from the class. So you can stay.
Right. You got to let them know that you're on campus and still have a pulse.
That's the one day you actually sit in the front row. You make the eye contact. Now, Brad, you pointed out that at least one SEC team would have been included in a 14 playoff in 9 of the past 10 years, based on how the BCS broke down. Can you expand kind of on your findings when you looked back on the last decade and how that might have played out if there were a committee?
Well, I think one of the things that's difficult to do is to take the BCS standings, the top 4, and presume that those would be the 4 teams in a playoff. Now, certainly some years that would have been the case. But then there are other years, like last year is a great example, where I don't think that would have translated directly. A year ago, Stanford was 11-1 and ranked number 4. Oregon was 10-2. Actually, I think they were 11-2 after they won the Pac-12 championship game, and they were ranked number 5. I think that would have been a slam dunk for a selection committee to put Oregon in as the 4th team, because late in the season they had beaten Stanford by about 30 points on Stanford's home field. They won the conference that those two teams played in, and the only reason Oregon had one more loss is because they played LSU out of conference. So I think that would have been a situation that would have been very easy for a selection committee to do something different than what the BCS standings had given us. The one that I think is fascinating is 2009. And remember when Alabama beat Florida in the SEC championship game 1-2. There were 5 undefeated teams at the end of the regular season. It was Alabama and Texas, who ended up, as you remember, playing for the national championship. And then behind them, Cincinnati finished 3rd in the BCS. TCU finished 4th. Florida dropped to 5th with that one loss, and then Boise was undefeated at number 6. And I would love to know what a selection committee would have done in that year, because everybody on that committee knew that Florida, with that one loss, was better than undefeated Cincinnati, TCU, and Boise State. Yet, if the committee is being given some directive to give weight to winning conference championships, what do they end up doing? I think it'll be really interesting moving forward to see how that would affect situations like that. But you would think that the SEC would be at an advantage if the committee members are simply being asked to put the best teams in there.